Check this out, guys. We got Democrats now kicking out Americans out of apartments in Chicago, and just guessing where this place is and what a lot of comments are saying is this is probably in the south side of Chicago. This is not a wealthy place at all. In fact, this is a very poor place. In fact, many of these people, they need to stay in these places or they're pretty much homeless. All right? These are the poor areas of America and Chicago, and this is what everyone is saying. They're kicking out hundreds of Chicago citizens in this apartment complex, and they essentially are making room for migrants. Every single public area, it seems, to just suddenly turn into a migrant shelter. If you check out this TikTok, the lady that's narrating it is not happy at all. In fact, she's very, very distressed. She isn't happy at all. She's saying that people like her who are broke and don't have money in Chicago get basically nothing. But if you're a migrant, you could get thousands of dollars on a prepaid debit card, a really nice hotel to stay, and basically sometimes even more rights than actual Chicago-born citizens. So this is what's happening here. Chicago is buckling underneath the pressure. Many Americans right now are super mad at that situation. And by the way, Chicago is honestly collapsing. This is not a super big city by international standards, and they're pretty much doing one of the biggest migrant causes I've ever seen. I mean, the population is only 2 million people, but they took in a little over 50,000 people. What in the world is Chicago doing? Now, you don't really see these migrants in like the north part of Chicago or like up here in the suburbs where the rich people live, right? You see a lot of poor Americans like the south side because it's easier to manage, I guess. Pretty much going to their recreational centers, turning into just migrant shelters. Like if you go to Boston, there's this poor neighborhood without that much money. Their only thing, their community, is their recreational center. They just took it and turned it into a migrant shelter. Same thing is happening in South Side of Chicago. Food deserts everywhere. Violent crime. Very, very low income everywhere. And seems like the perfect place for many of these people to just turn into a migrant shelter. And this is honestly kind of sad, and we're actually seeing a lot of evictions happening in many of the migrant shelters. And where are these people going to go? The streets, and they don't want them on the streets all day. So let's just evict some of the native Chicago residents out and make room for the migrant crisis. And the wave of Chicago suburbs are now moving to block migrant arrivals. Now, one of the biggest arguments I hear about this is many of these suburbs just don't have the capabilities to take in that many people. Look at Chicago. It's a very robust city there's a lot of cops, a lot of firemen, there's a lot of big services, a lot of money, and they could barely handle 50,000 people coming in. What about these smaller suburbs like this one right here or this one right here? What about these little suburbs? These are not big towns. They're just suburban places. If you add in 1,000 or 2,000 migrants, they basically are just going to collapse. Many of these suburbs outside Chicago are super mad. They're like, you're doing this migrant crisis situation, and now you're going to put this on us? That is definitely a no-go. And if you look at what's going on in the rest of Illinois, everyone is pretty mad. In fact, Chicago mayor is saying that the state of Illinois should also be dealing with this, not just Chicago themselves, which is what a lot of people are saying is pretty bullcrap. They're saying that Chicago did this migrant crisis and now everyone's paying the price? Definitely not. The thing about Chicago is it just took in way too many people in a very short amount of time. When you take in almost 50,000 people in a city with only 2 million, you're asking for trouble, especially many of the shelters, many of the capabilities of the city are not prepared to take in that many migrants. And look at this, migrants to Chicago on the edge as evictions from temporary shelters loom. More than 1,300 people are under pressure to find new homes and work before they're mass evicted. And by the way, these shelters that evict them, they're not going to stay empty. They're going to get in a new wave, a fresh wave of migrants. And what about the original 13,000 people? Where are they going to go? Well, maybe some will be lucky and kind of live in these apartment complexes, which they recently just evict everyone, or they just sleep on the streets. This is a very tough situation. I don't think anyone is happy. I don't think the migrants are happy. I don't think the residents are happy. And definitely the taxpayers are not happy. But this is going to be modern America, and this is what it's going to look like. And no wonder you have so many people moving to places like Nevada, Tampa, Austin. There's a reason why. So thanks for watching, guys. Comment below. What do you guys think of this so far? Can Chicago solve their migrant crisis?